Welcome back. So, right now we're going to focus on the first civilizations that began to develop in the Americas after the end of the Ice Age. So, we're going to be looking at an area, what today would be Central America here, from the southern portions of Mexico throughout all of Central America. And this is the region that we refer to as Mesoamerica. And one of the first and earliest civilizations that developed in Mesoamerica were a society known as the Olmecs, right? And the Olmecs are most well known for these huge stone faces that they created, which looked out over a lot of other villages. And each of these faces could weigh around 20 tons. So the Olmec society itself was a society that was made up of almost thousands of people, and they had the ability to grow enough food to be able to provide for all of these thousands of people. Um, and it's believed that they moved these huge stone structures that they created, not only these large faces, but large pyramids as well, all throughout these rivers, floating along these rivers with very simple machines. So it really was an amazing feat. The Olmecs then appeared around the area of Mesoamerica at around 1200 BCE till about 400 BCE is when the Olmec civilization began to die out or disappear, rather, because we're not really sure what happened to them. It could have been famine, perhaps through warfare, some kind of natural disaster, but we don't have any kind of proof, and we still didn't have a clear writing system just then to know exactly what may have happened to the Olmecs, or their large society ended up kind of just dying out and disappearing by the time we get to 400 BCE. There's no more trace of the Olmec society throughout Mesoamerica. At around this same time that the Olmecs begin to decline, we begin to see another civilization in Mesoamerica emerge, right? And these were the Mayas. So the Mayas emerged around 300 BCE till about 900 CE, so Common Era, did the Maya civilization flourish throughout Mesoamerica. The Mayas developed their civilization around the rainforest area mostly. They raised crops, they built pyramids and temples as well. And the Mayas had a very particular type of government, one that we refer to as a theocracy, meaning that it was ruled by gods, right? They worshiped the sun, the stars, the moon. They developed their own 365-day calendar, right? The Maya calendar that most people are familiar with. They built a huge trade network made from canals where they could then trade with other civilizations within the Maya Empire and with other groups of people. And at around 900 CE, that's when they started to also kind of decline and disappear in the region of Mesoamerica. That leads us to one of the first kind of warrior civilizations that we're going to talk about, and these were the Aztecs. Right, the Mayas and the Olmecs we saw created these large civilizations. It depended on a lot of trading, but they weren't exactly conquerors. And the Aztecs are very different from them in that sense. The Aztecs would be conquerors. They would go to other areas, other small villages, and conquer them and make them part of their large Aztec empire. So they had a very different way of ruling over people around them. They start to emerge around the areas of what today would be Mexico at 1110 CE till about 1521 CE, when the Aztecs will be defeated then by the Spanish once they start coming into these regions. The capital of the Aztec Empire was the city of Tenochtitlan, which, if you remember throughout the history of the Aztecs, or if you've never heard the story of the history of the Aztecs, and it's actually imprinted on the Mexican flag, it's the center of the Mexican flag, symbolizes the city of Tenochtitlan because it was part of a legend and a prophecy where the capital of the Aztec Empire would be found in the center of a lake, and that's Lake Texcoco, which they used to create the city. And the legend says that there was an eagle with a snake in his mouth perched atop of a cactus in the center of a lake, and that was the symbol to them that that is where they were supposed to create their capital. And they did, and it was quite an amazing feat at that time to be able to drain out that lake to create the capital, to create a series of bridges and canals to then communicate and be able to travel from that capital to other parts of the Aztec Empire. So the Aztecs were definitely a very powerful empire. Tenochtitlan became one of the largest cities in the world at that time when it was created. And as we mentioned, they were a conquering group of people. That's how they ruled. They were also known to take a lot of prisoners for those that rebelled or those who refused to submit to Aztec rule, right? And the Aztecs were also known to have human sacrifices as part of their religious rituals. So by the time the Spanish come in the 1500s, the Aztecs are going to be a very powerful empire in the Americas. Now, further south, right, along the Andes region, we have another group of people, the Incas, who also begin to develop a huge empire. Around 1100 CE, they begin to grow. They first started as these small groups within the Andes, the region of what today would be Peru, right? And these groups of people began to grow and create this powerful empire. And their first capital was the capital of Cusco, right, and which to now is today in Peru. And this powerful government that they created united them into a population of about 12 million people eventually. And they all spoke the common language at that time of Quechua, which you can still see spoken in the regions of the Andes today. The Incas had a lot of different types of innovations. They were known for creating these terraced farming areas, a network of roads, and they also had their own unique way of record keeping without the use of writing. And this is what was known as the quipu. And it was a collection of strings or any type of other type of material, strings or yarn, whatever you want to call it. And it had a series of knots. And all of these knots symbolize different types of words and phrases. And so this quipu is the way that they were able to keep records. And only a small number of people really were able to understand and be able to interpret the quipu itself. Religious ceremonies were very important for the Incas, and they built cities along regions of where they practiced these religious ceremonies. One of the most well known of these is Machu Picchu, which is the one that is pictured here, right? And this is one of the most well known cities that they built along their temples to be able to perform their religious ceremonies. Once again, by the time we get to the 1500s, the Spanish have started to come into the Americas throughout South and Central America and begin to conquer these areas. So when the Spanish come into the region of the Andes and confront the Incas, that also becomes their downfall, and eventually the Inca Empire is destroyed and is lost to the Spanish, who then take over. And we'll talk more about that in our next chapter when we start talking a little bit more about European exploration here in the Americas. So we've talked about some very important civilizations here in Mesoamerica, and one way to kind of help you remember the order of these civilizations and who they are is a small little mnemonic device that you can use, and it's "Oh my, America's interesting," symbolizing the Olmecs, the Mayas, the Aztecs, and the Incas that we all talked about right now. But I hope this helped, and I will talk to you next time.